Hey, really quickly before we get into today's episode, tomorrow I will be doing my very first live stream on Discord. So every week or at the most every other week, my plan is to stream live with you guys on Discord, and you guys can choose whether we watch a horror movie, play a horror game, chat and chill, or read some scary stories, things like that. I'm trying to get more active over on my Discord and bring more people over there so that we can talk and, integrate and do whatever you want to call it and, hang out. I don't know. I'm fumbling over my words right now. But that's only going to be on Discord. So if you're interested in something like that at all, you will have to go join my Discord. I will leave the link, which is always in the description anyway, at the top of the description, as well as pin it in the comments on YouTube. And then if you're listening to this on Spotify, please just go find the link where it normally is in the description. Love to see you guys over there if you're interested in that at all. If not, no worries. Just wanted to put that out there. And yeah, I haven't looked at the poll, but I think I can't remember exactly what. Either way, please come over there, stop by, say hi, hang out, shoot the shit, whatever you want to call it, chop it up with me and have some fun, some laughs, share some drinks. Yeah, all that fun stuff. So hope to see you over there tomorrow at 8 p.m. Central Standard Time. I'm going to shut up now and let's get into these coastal stories, baby. Yeah. I started crewing for Captain Doyle the summer that I turned 24. I was broke, divorced, and living in this mildew camper behind a gas station inside Rockland, Maine. I'd moved up from Massachusetts, hoping for a clean break, but the job market here was just as dead as my last relationship was. Nobody was hiring except on the docks, and even those jobs were seasonal scraps. That's how I ended up on Doyle's trawler, the Widow Jane. Everybody on the wharf had a story about him. He'd once punched a harbor cop in the mouth and somehow got away with it. He'd lost a finger in the war or some kind of story. Nobody really knew, and Doyle wasn't really the type to explain himself. He was wiry, half dead, and always smelled like diesel and shit. But he paid in cash, didn't ask questions, and mostly just left you alone. And that was enough for me. The job was simple. We'd head out before dawn, check the traps and haul back what we could, then head back before sunset. Sometimes we'd go out overnight if the catch was lean. I didn't mind. Being out there adrift in the cold Atlantic silence was better than sitting inside that camper, thinking about how badly I'd fucked up my life. Now, Doyle had a ritual. Before we launched, he'd always touch the wheelhouse door frame twice, once with his palm and once with the back of his hand. Superstition, maybe. And he never wore a life vest, never let me steer, and never let me in the forward hold. Said it was for tools and gear that I didn't really need to worry about. We kept things businesslike, no small talk, just commands and the occasional hacking laugh if I slipped on the deck. But over the weeks, I started to notice things that didn't add up. Some of our runs were way off the map drop zone. He'd kill the GPS sometimes when we were miles out, claiming it glitched. Once I found this small patch of blood on the rear dock. It could have been bait, but it wasn't slimy like fish blood. It was dried and almost brown. The last trip, in late August, started out like any other. Early morning haze, gulls wheeling overhead, thermos coffee and diesel rumbling beneath our boots. Doyle didn't say where we were headed, just told me to stow the lines and be ready for a long haul. He had this strange look in his eyes, like he was already somewhere else, quiet and really twitchy. By late afternoon, we were farther out than I'd ever been before. Water deepened into this glassy black. Doyle quickly cut the engine, paced the deck, and then lit a smoke with trembling fingers. Then he pointed to a marker buoy bobbing off on starboard and said, "That's the one." I pulled the trap line. Heavy, really heavy. But it wasn't a trap. It was a steel barrel slick with algae and sealed tight, leaking something dark from the seam. The barrel thudded onto the deck with a clank, and I stood over it, wiping brine off my hands, trying to make sense of it. This wasn't lobster gear, wasn't anything I'd ever seen pulled from the ocean, not even when I'd worked the dock crew unloading out-of-state hauls. It was welded shut, industrial, and really old. Doyle dropped his cigarette and stomped it out. He didn't move for a long beat, just stared at the barrel like it was speaking to him. "Help me throw it back," he said finally. I laughed awkwardly. Shouldn't we, I don't know, call the Coast Guard? It might be toxic, or help me throw it back." It was a lot louder now, a snap that hit something deep within me. I stepped back with my hands up. "What the hell is this, Doyle?" He didn't answer me. He walked to the helm and yanked out the ignition key. No engine, no power. We were just drifting now. "Open it," I said. "I'm not throwing shit overboard unless I know whatever the hell this is." "You don't want to know." "It's too late for that," I responded. I found a tire iron in the forward hold, despite his rules about going in there, and wedged it under the rusted lid. The stench hit first, thick like raw meat left in the sun. Then something sloshed and I got the lid off and staggered back. Inside was a body, folded and contorted, knees pulled up to the chest, wrapped in a clear painter's tarp and bound in silver duct tape. Pale flesh, bloated and slick with decay. A plastic grocery bag tied up over the head. I dry heaved, fell to my knees and clutched the railing. Doyle stood there, didn't even flinch, just watched me like he was studying another chart. "Jesus Christ," I gasped out loud. "What the fuck is this, Doyle?" He sat there on a cooler, lit another smoke and stared into the horizon. "That's the one from 81. Kid owed some guys big, brought a knife to a debt meeting. Bad idea." My brain skipped like a scratched CD. "What do you mean, that one?" No response. "Is this what we've been doing?" I said. "Running traps over fucking graves?" Still no answer, just a slow exhale of smoke through his nose. "You killed him?" "Me? No. I just knew where to put him." The rage hit before the fear, and I stood up and went for the radio, ripped the mic off the receiver, but it was dead. He'd killed the battery or maybe cut the cable. Either way, we were alone. No signal, no help. I turned back and Doyle was standing now, a rusted hook in his hand. "I told you," he said. "You didn't want to know." He swung first and missed. The hook clanged off the deck rail, sparks flying. I rushed him, driving my shoulder into his chest, knocking him backwards against the cabin door. He slammed into it hard, but the bastard didn't even fall. We grappled, boots slipping over the wet deck until I got my hands on the tire iron. I swung it once wildly and cracked his wrist. The hook dropped and he howled and stumbled back, clutching at his arm. "Get off my boat!" he growled at me. The adrenaline was exploding through every inch of me. I backed toward the bow and grabbed the flare gun from its bracket. Doyle froze when he saw it. "You don't want to start a fire out here," he said. "Yeah? Don't tempt me." We were now in a standoff, him nursing a broken wrist and me shaking so bad I could barely hold that flare gun straight. "Why me?" I asked him. "Why the hell bring me all the way out here?" "You just opened the fucking wrong one is all," he said. "I picked the wrong barrel. You don't have any people, so now you gotta go too. Just like him." A sick silence then settled over us, broken only by the gentle slap of the ocean. I had one flare and one shot. If I missed or didn't catch, I'd be stranded here with the killer. So I did the only thing I could really think of. I dropped the flare gun, grabbed a nearby oar, and swung over the fences. He screamed once as it slammed into his face. He fell backwards, arm pinwheeling, and landing with a crack of his skull on the deck. Blood began to seep from his head into the grooves of the boat, thick and slowly. I didn't move yet, I just stared at him. Eventually I checked for a pulse and I couldn't find one. I didn't sleep much that night, didn't move really either, just sat with my back against the wheelhouse door, flare gun across my lap, eyes locked on Doyle's body. His blood ran between the deck planks, thick as oil, and the barrel stood where I'd left it, open, reeking and silent. Eventually I wrapped him up in a tarp. Not for him, for me, so I didn't have to look at his dead, grizzled face as I turned the boat around. By dawn, I'd figured out how to rig the power to the radio. Doyle had only disconnected it, hadn't destroyed it. I hailed the Coast Guard on a shaky signal somewhere 10 miles out of Bar Harbor. Took them 2 hours to get to me. When they boarded, I told them the truth, most of it. Said that we'd pulled this barrel with a body inside. Said Doyle attacked me and I fought back. I didn't mention the other barrels, the trips without the GPS or the forward hold. They arrested me anyway though. I guess that's standard. Took the body, took Doyle's too. Hauled the widow Jane into a cove and spent a week combing over every inch of her. They ended up finding 2 more barrels, one buried in concrete under a false floor at the dock, one bolted to a crab trap and set to sink. Total body count was 3. Doyle didn't kill them himself as far as anybody else could prove, but he'd taken the money, hidden the mess, kept the ocean clean for people who didn't want any questions asked. He was dumping bodies for dealers, bikers, and whoever had the cash to get to them. Police asked me to stay in town during the investigation and I agreed. Stayed inside this cheap motel near the harbor, staring at the ceiling fan for days, not really sleeping much. Reporters called me. One tried to even get into my room and I told her nothing. Eventually they cleared me, self-defense, no charges. They even offered me this payout for cooperating. I didn't take it though. I didn't want any blood money. I left Rockland that fall, bought a used truck, headed west with no map, just needed to be away from water, far away, landlocked. And for those that are curious, this all took place in the mid-80s. We booked the trip to save our relationship, and I guess sometimes that's how it starts, right? A Hail Mary attempt to get away, like distance could really fix what's already cracked down the middle. Big Sur was her idea, remote, romantic, dramatic coastal views, the kind that make you forget the bullshit, she said to me. I went along with it because I still loved her, even if we hadn't been ourselves in months. Long silences, sharp glances, sleep on opposite sides of the house. I figured if there was any place left that could shake us loose from the funk, I guess it might be California's Ragged Edge. The rental was actually pretty perfect in that eerie, uncanny way. Private Airbnb on a bluff above the ocean. Gravel road to get there, no cell service for miles. And a house built practically on a cliffside. All glass walls, polished concrete floors, modern, sleek, and cold. You could hear the Pacific roar from every single room. And that part was beautiful, sure, but it never stopped. Like something trying to crawl inside the house even. A handwritten note from the owner sat on the kitchen island. Welcome. Enjoy the peace and solitude. Be careful near the edge. There are no safety rails. Please close the blinds at night to avoid disorienting local wildlife. That line kind of stuck with me. Disorienting local wildlife? What? It seemed oddly specific. But anyway, the first night went okay. We cooked together, shared a bottle of wine, watched the sun drag itself down into the water. We didn't really talk much, but at least we weren't arguing. That's progress. The weird stuff started on the second night though. I woke up to her standing by the giant floor-to-ceiling window in the living room, just staring. The moonlight had lit her up in silver, almost like she was made out of smoke. Everything okay? I asked. She didn't turn around, just said, "There's somebody down there." "Down where?" I asked her. She pointed and I walked over half asleep. We were easily 50 feet up from the rocky surf. Steep cliff, sheer drop-off, nothing below us but jagged stone and ocean foam. I squinted through the glass in front of me. I don't see anything. He's standing still, right there. She tapped the glass with one finger. When I looked again, the spot was empty. I think you're tired," I said gently. "Maybe you saw a shadow?" But she wouldn't let it go. She watched the cliff every single night after that. Said the same thing. "There's somebody down there." Never moving, always the same place, always just out of my view. I eventually stopped trying to convince her that it was real because on the fourth night, I saw him too. I got up to use the bathroom around 2:30 a.m., saw the blinds were open again. I pulled them shut before bed. Her new habit of keeping them open was starting to weird me out. I crossed the living room and was about to yank the chain when something froze me. Down at the bottom of the cliff where the rocks met the tide, a figure was there standing, motionless. My first thought was that it had to be a statue, and my second was, how the fuck would a statue get down there? It looked like a man, very tall, slouched shoulders, facing away from us toward the ocean. The moon was casting just enough light to make out the shape. Bare feet, dark clothes, maybe a hood or long hair. I couldn't really tell because he wasn't moving. I backed away from the window. She'd been right this whole time. I went back to bed without really waking her up. I didn't know what I should say. Hey babe, there's definitely a guy down there on that jagged rocks at 3 in the morning. You're right. It felt insane, but in the morning I told her anyway. Her reaction was pretty reserved. I told you, she said. I've seen him every single night. We ended up hiking a trail that morning, a narrow, steep mess of roots and loose gravel that wound around the cliffside. I didn't tell her my legs were still shaking. I kept trying to spot the base of the cliffs from above, but the overgrowth was just too thick. Everything between the road and the rocks were just brush, sand, and silence. Later on that day, we drove into town for some groceries, and I asked a clerk, some older guy with leathery skin and a slow voice, if people ever hiked down below the cliffs. He looked up sharply at me. You guys in that Airbnb? We nodded at him. He didn't really elaborate, just scanned our stuff and said, I can't believe they still rent that place out. I asked him why. Bad business, was his response, and that was it. That night I ended up staying up with her. We made some coffee and sat silently in the dark, watching the cliffs through the window. The tide was lower, the rock exposed like jagged bones. And just after 3 a.m., there he was again. Same place, same posture, completely still. Do you think he's real? She whispered to me. I don't know. We watched for nearly 20 minutes and the man didn't move an inch. No shifting, no sway, not even a twitch. Then she stood up and said, I need to see. I tried to stop her, but her shoes were already on and her coat was in her hand. She walked out the front door without another word. I quickly grabbed a flashlight and followed behind her. That trail was worse at night, steeper than I remember, and every branch seemed to reach up for my face. We moved slow and carefully. I kept calling her name, but she wasn't responding. Just kept walking ahead of me like she already knew the way. When I caught up to her near the bottom, she had stopped. The figure was no longer there. The rocks were empty, only the crash of the waves and the distant salt wind. She scanned the area, then spun in a slow circle and turned back to me. He's gone. And that's when we heard this sound just above the tide line, behind the walls of boulders, like feet slapping wet stone. I flicked my flashlight toward it, and the beam caught something, the edge of a tattered black jacket disappearing behind a rock. I whispered to her, we need to go. But she stepped forward. Wait, he might be hurt or something. No. I grabbed her wrist. He's not. And that's when a voice came. It wasn't loud, it wasn't angry. It was almost like somebody trying to imitate a human voice from super far away. Help, it said, just once, flat and toneless. We both froze. And then it said her name. I didn't even know it knew her name until she turned back at me with these eyes full of tears and whispered to me, it sounds like my dad. Her father had killed himself 9 years ago, jumped from a building in Oregon, closed casket, no note. I yanked her backward. She fought me for a second, but then the voice said her name again. This time it was louder, and that finally snapped her out of it. We ran. Up the trail, branches tearing at our arms, dirt sliding underneath our feet. I didn't look back until we were almost back at the top. And when I did, I saw the figure at the bottom again, standing perfectly still and watching. Only it wasn't facing the ocean anymore. Now it was facing us. We didn't speak on the way back to the house, didn't even look at each other, just slammed the front door shut and locked it. Every window, every latch. She sat there on the edge of the couch, staring at her hands. I paced the kitchen, heart still thundering in my chest. Eventually she whispered, that wasn't him. Yeah, I know. Whatever we saw down there, it knew her name, and it wasn't just repeating it, it used it like bait, like a lure before a fish. We packed before the sun rose and tossed our bags with shaking hands, shirts inside out, toothpaste still foaming in the sink. I backed the car down the gravel road at a full 25 miles per hour. The Airbnb owner never responded back to my messages, just left me on read. When I left a review, it was gone within the hour, listing taken down, vanished, almost like it never even existed. A week later, a ranger from the Big Sur area called my girlfriend's phone, said a pair of hikers found signs of a squatter camp near the base of the cliff, hidden behind the rocks. No tent, just some bones and a few scraps of fabric, a weathered photograph of a family buried under some driftwood. It could have been from decades ago. They asked if we'd seen anything or anyone unusual, and she said yes and explained that nighttime figure. I don't know what the hell we saw. A squatter, a stalker living off the grid, somebody playing some kind of game. That was the theory the cops liked, some lunatic with a hidey hole and a death wish. It was absolutely the worst vacation of my life. I didn't come to Kauai for the beaches and Mai Tais. I came to disappear for a while. After the divorce, I needed out of the city, out of the stairs, out of that echo chamber of old text threads and split furniture. I found the blue house by accident, actually. A friend of a friend sent me to the link. It wasn't even listed on Airbnb, just this private site with a blurry header image and a PayPal button at the bottom. 2 bedrooms tucked on the North Shore, deep past the old sugarcane fields. Off-grid but solar-powered, no neighbors. For the peace seeker and the artist, the listing said. I really wasn't either, but I booked it anyway. It was paradise. Tall grass swaying in the breeze, wild chickens darting through the driveway. The jungle felt like it wanted to swallow the house whole, but in this really good way, a protective way. The air smelled like mangoes and rain. That whole first day, I did really nothing but sit on the lanai and breathe. That night, I cooked, cracked a beer, and watched the stars come out like fireflies. You don't see skies like that on the mainland. No planes, no towers, just black and silver, and the endless hum of frogs. Honestly, I slept better that night than I had in months. But the next morning, something was off. My coffee mug wasn't where I left it. The chair on the lanai had been moved, just a few inches, and it couldn't have been from the wind, and that screen door was left unlatched. I chalked it up to me being tired, jet lag maybe. Maybe I'd knocked over the cup without really realizing it. But the second night it happened again. This time the utensils were rearranged. My sandals were by the front door, not the bedroom, and the fridge was open by an inch. Still, there was no sign of break-ins, the windows were sealed, no prints left in the red dirt outside. But by day 3, I wasn't really sleeping. I tried locking every door, jamming a chair under the knob, but it didn't matter. Every morning, something was different. Subtle things. My clothes were refolded, my toothbrush was missing, then reappearing later on in the sink. The house felt less like a rental and more like I'd moved into somebody else's house, somebody who was still here. The final straw was the audio. I left my phone recording overnight just to prove that I wasn't crazy, and around 3:14 a.m., there was a whisper, breathy and high-pitched. It was in Hawaiian. I don't know what it said, but it repeated the same thing twice. Then this faint creak of a footstep on the lanai, then another. I packed a knife in my waistband and decided that night I'm staying awake because whoever was walking outside, they clearly wanted in. I sat in the dark with the lights off, and the sliding door cracked just enough to catch a breeze. Knife was still in hand, coffee going cold on the table. Every creak of the house was making my skin crawl. And then around 2:47 a.m., I heard it again. 2 steps, barefoot. The boards of the lanai flexed under somebody's weight, far too heavy to be an animal. My heart quickly slammed against my ribs. I raised the knife and waited, breath caught like a fishhook in my throat. Then silence followed, no knock, no voice, Just one slow step and then nothing. I lunged for the door and yanked it open. The lanai was empty. Moonlight lit the overgrown grass and the jungle beyond. The night pulsed with frogs and wind. I swept my flashlight across the yard and nothing was moving. But when I turned back toward the house, I froze. The kitchen light was now on, and I hadn't turned it on. I moved slowly, knife raised through the doorway. The air inside felt colder somehow. That's when I noticed the floor, wet footprints, bare ones, leading from the kitchen to the hallway. I followed. Every inch of me was screaming the whole time to stop, to get in the rental car, gun it down that blasted dirt road. But I had to know. I had to see. The prints stopped at the closet in the guest room, not the bedroom that I was sleeping in, the other one, the one I hadn't opened since I arrived. I stood there for almost a full minute, gripping the knob, and then I found the courage and flung the door open. Empty, just a few hangers, some dusty beach towels, but the smell hit me, musty and sour like old sweat and mildew. And then I heard a click from behind me, from the living room. I turned and saw the screen door slowly drifting open, and I ran out, back onto the lanai. And there she was, a woman, long silver hair, back hunched, barefoot in the grass, maybe in her 60s. Her dress was shredded, clinging to her like rags. She was muttering something I couldn't quite hear, turning in the slow circle like she was confused. Hello? I called stupidly. She stopped and looked right at me. Her face was gaunt and stretched, her eyes were milky and wide, but I could see recognition in them. You're in my house, she said to me. I stepped back. No, I rented this. No. This is my house. She started walking toward me and I backed up and reached for my phone. No signal. I grabbed the flashlight and aimed it at her. She flinched, covering her eyes with her arm. You don't belong here, she growled at me. I'll call the police. I lied. I am the police, she snapped back, before breaking into a sprint, like her body didn't really quite understand how to run. I slammed the screen door and locked it, then ran around the back of the house and through the deadbolt on the second entrance. She was pounding on the walls now, circling the house in heavy steps. I heard her dragging something, wood or metal, I wasn't sure. I crouched in the corner with a knife, the flashlight pointing toward the door. After what felt like an hour, the sound stopped and silence found me again. Then I heard a new sound, a dull thud from underneath the floorboards. She was under the house. This blue house was built on stilts, a few feet of crawl space beneath the handle flooding. I hadn't checked it since I arrived and I never really thought to, but she knew every board, every vent, every single gap. I heard her voice drift up from the floorboards. They left it to me. I never sold it. I never left. My flashlight flickered and I smacked it, and that's when the banging started, underneath me, beneath the floor, slamming up into the boards like she was trying to break through. I grabbed my keys and bolted, out the front door, through the yard, and off into my truck. The engine screamed to life like it knew I needed out. And as I peeled away, I saw her in my rear view, standing in the lanai again, barefoot, dress fluttering, just watching me. I didn't stop driving until I pulled into this 24-hour gas station, sat in the parking lot with the rental truck still running, hands shaking so bad I dropped my wallet trying to buy a bottle of water. The woman behind the counter asked if I was okay, and I told her the truth, at least part of it. She didn't really flinch, just asked me, "You were up in 𝐾𝐨𝐽, yeah?" I nodded, and she sighed and rang me up. All druggies out that way, they're pretty much all crazy. I checked into the first motel that I could find, locked every door, shoved the chair under the knob, and slept with the lights on. At least, for the first time in 3 days, I didn't hear any footsteps and I didn't wake up to whispering. The next morning, I filed a report with the local police. They were polite but slow-moving, said they'd send somebody to check the property, took my statement and wrote it all down. A week later, I got an email from the property site. "We've processed your refund in full. Thank you for your stay at the Blue House." No mention of what I reported, no apology, just a refund, like it was a business, and I guess it was, but they acted like it wasn't the first time, and I'm sure it wasn't. I found a local forum when I was doom scrolling in my motel room, hidden in a thread about off-grid rentals. Somebody had posted a blurry photo of the blue house, same one I stayed in, and their comment read, "Watch out for this old woman. She still thinks it's hers. Will show up at night. Don't argue." Nobody replied to it and nobody asked for details. It was just kind of accepted. Too bad my buddy failed to mention anything when he recommended it to me. I flew home a few days later and my friend tried to ask me how the trip went. I told him the island was beautiful and peaceful. I never really told him about what actually happened to me. I actually found the shack on this surfing forum. It was buried deep in this thread titled "Places to Drift Off of the Map." The guy who posted it said it was really cheap and quiet, and 10 minutes from a completely empty beach somewhere south of 𝐬𝐿𝐫𝐞. The photos were blurry, probably taken with a flip phone, but I booked it anyway. My plan was pretty simple: a month off the grid. No emails, no traffic, just my boards, my notebook, and the sea. I was pretty fried from work, burnout from everything, so the rough dirt road, spotty electricity, and complete lack of cell signal felt perfect to me. Now the shack was actually smaller than it looked online, but pretty solid. Plywood walls, tin roof, rain barrel. The ocean was visible through the dry brush and succulents, loud, close, and constant. That first week I barely left the water, surfed in the morning, wrote in the afternoon, and drank cheap beer at night. The village nearby was small and weirdly quiet. Everybody smiled, but it never felt really welcoming. I got the scent they'd been burned out by tourists before me. At the roadside stand, I chatted it up with a guy selling tamales, asked if the waves were always that good. He told me that yes, but don't surf when the tide is lowest. The sea hides bad things, then handed me my food and turned away from me. I figured it was just some kind of local superstition, fisherman talk, you know? But 2 weeks into my stay, something strange did happen. The tide dropped lower than I'd ever seen before. The water peeled back from the beach like it had been yanked back by something. Rocks I'd never seen before poked up like shark fins, dark and slick. Tide pools opened up with neon creatures pulsing inside. And further down the beach, about 400 yards from the shack, I saw something that didn't quite belong. A wall. Tall and concrete, out in the surf where no wall should be. It was maybe 6 feet high and 6 feet wide, coated in algae and barnacles. A rusted iron bar jutted from the top like a broken handle. I walked toward it, shoes in hand, trying to convince myself it was just an old breakwater or forgotten fishing infrastructure, but when I got closer, it became pretty obvious. It wasn't part of anything, just a slab of concrete sticking out of the sand at this weird, impossible angle. Almost like it had been dropped there or buried, only now exposed. Embedded in the face of the wall, halfway up, was a sealed hatch. I touched it, cold, even in the sun. The hatch was metal, rusted at the seams. I pried at it with my hands, but it wouldn't budge. Eventually, though, I found a long piece of driftwood and wedged it in like a crowbar. I had this feeling it was just some kind of old runoff pipe that they'd sealed up in the 80s or something, when stuff like that was mostly made illegal. After 10 minutes or so of straining, the latch popped and a hiss of air escaped, like opening a pressure cooker, and I pulled that hatch open. Inside was a metal ladder. The space below smelled like rust, salt, and sea rot. I called out just to hear the echo, but nothing. I dropped a rock and it hit after 3 seconds. Not too deep. So I climbed down. There was a single room, bare concrete, damp, and windowless. A rusted cot was against one wall, a camera mounted in the corner, dead. A table, and on that table, a metal tray stained dark. Leather restraints were bolted into the floorboards near that cot. I stood there for a while, unsure if I found some kind of Cold War bunker or something far worse. And then I heard it. The ocean. The tide was coming in. I scrambled up the ladder, boots slipping on the wet rungs, and by the time I made it back to the beach, the water had already reached my ankles. I couldn't and didn't go back to the shack. I walked straight to town, barefoot, shirt soaked, and went straight to the cantina. I asked the bartender, this older guy with sharp eyes, if he knew anything about that concrete wall. His face changed almost immediately, not shocked, but resigned. "You didn't open it, did you?" I didn't respond. He walked away from me without another word. And that night, somebody knocked on the shack's door. 3 slow knocks. No footsteps, no shadow, just the knocking. I stayed in the corner of the room holding a knife, and the knock didn't come again. At sunrise, I ran back to the beach to look for that wall, and it was gone. No trace, no hatch, not even a ripple in the sand. I packed that afternoon and left the key under the mat. I didn't clean the place, didn't lock up, just walked the half-mile into town, flagged a ride back to Tijuana, and booked a red-eye home. I never posted about it, I never warned anybody on the forum, and to this day I believed I stepped into some kind of cartel hideaway. My brother Mason's great idea was to take the long way to my college orientation in Wilmington, looping through the Outer Banks so that I could see the real Carolina coast. I wasn't exactly thrilled about the idea. I'd already said goodbye to all my friends in Raleigh and just wanted to get through the dorms and just get on with it. But Mason was paying for gas and seemed genuinely excited to hang out before we split up for good. We camped in Nags Head for the night, then set our alarms for 3:45 a.m. so we could make it to the Cedar Island ferry by 6. We needed to be in line early or they'd leave without us. Problem was, we left 15 minutes late and Google Maps showed a wall of red where Route 12 had been flooded out. That's when we saw the hand-painted sign nailed to a tree off the shoulder. Ferry access, local use only. It pointed down this narrow road that curved away from the main highway off into the trees. "No way that's real," I said to him, and Mason grinned back. "Shortcuts are plenty real, dude." I protested, but he ignored me. We then turned off and entered into a world the GPS did not recognize. The pavement was old, no lane markings, barely wide enough for 2 cars. Pines arched over the road like a tunnel, no lights, no signs, just the hum of the tires and the occasional flicker of fog in the headlights. Our signal dropped to 0 bars immediately. "This is kinda creepy," I muttered. "Chill," Mason said back. "This is what the locals use when the highway floods. Think they want to miss the ferry too?" We drove off in silence for a while, maybe 10-15 minutes tops. The forest pressed in tightly on both sides, and that's when this truck showed up. Old and boxy. One of those 1970s Fords with a square grille and a body made out of steel. Its headlights flickered on behind us out of nowhere. "Where the hell did he come from?" I asked. "I don't know, maybe pulled off from a side road?" "Dude, there are no side roads." Mason didn't answer me. The truck stayed behind us, not tailgating exactly, but pretty close. Whenever we slowed, it slowed. When we sped up, it did too. "Brake check?" he offered. "No, don't." But he did it anyway. Just a little tap and the truck didn't really react. It was like the guy behind the wheel already knew we'd do that and was ready to plow right into our rear end. We kept going, no turnoffs, no houses, just pine and asphalt. That goddamn truck behind us too. "I really don't like this," I said. "Pull over." "Yeah, and do what? Chat it up with Leatherface?" He tried to lose him, accelerated, but the road just twisted endlessly, looping back and forth, and we weren't really getting anywhere. The truck's headlights stayed steady in the rear view, not gaining but not falling back. And then the headlights cut off, nothing but darkness behind us now. Where'd he go?" "I don't know," Mason said back to me. We crested this small hill and then it came to a dead end. Not a cul-de-sac, not a town, just a rusted chain link gate wrapped up in barbed wire, blocking the road with a hand-painted sign that read, "No ferry this way." And then beneath that in red spray paint, "Turn around." Behind that fence was marshland stretching off into black nothing. We spun the car around and boom, there he was. The same truck, parked sideways across the road, blocking our exit. The headlights were off and the engine was silent, and a figure now stood in front of it, not moving. They were wearing this yellow raincoat, face in shadow, hands at his side. He didn't approach, didn't gesture or anything, just stood there like a scarecrow at the center of the road. "Back up," I whispered. "We can't go through that fence," Mason said back. "Then get us around him." Mason jerked the wheel and swerved off the shoulder into the ditch. Tires screamed, mud flew, and for a second I really thought we were about to get stuck. But the car caught traction and launched back onto the road on the other side of the truck. I looked out the window as we passed. The man didn't even turn his head. Back on the highway, the GPS snapped back to life like nothing had ever happened. Signals restored, roads became familiar again. Mason's knuckles were white on the wheel and I couldn't stop looking behind us. Nothing was following us though. We ended up reaching the ferry dock with 6 minutes to spare. The operator looked half asleep in his booth, but when he saw our plates and where we come from, his expression changed. "You didn't take that old cut through, did you?" Neither of us responded. He just nodded. "Boys barely made it. That old shortcut has been throwing people off ever since they closed it." "Yeah, but it was paved," I said. He just gave me this look of boredom and then waved us on. I didn't say anything else until we were moving across the water, the mainland shrieking behind us. Mason leaned back in his seat, finally letting out this deep breath. "Not gonna lie, I really thought we were about to die," he said flatly. "Yeah, me too." After orientation, he dropped me off and drove back home. He never said if he saw anything else on the way home either, but in hindsight, dude must have probably just been a local trying to catch us before we hit the dead end, but who knows? Maybe he wasn't.